All right, here we are. Just welcome back. This is Bob Frazier, Bob Hartley, and Eddie Boasso. And yes, and we're very excited about this season. All of us have this incredible sense of anticipation for what the Lord is doing. But it's very exciting. We're feeling very much. It's a time to really build intentionally and to start to really steward the prophetic. We're going to talk about the storehouses some. And so we're joining forces, Bob and I specifically, our organization's joining forces more intentionally than ever in this season and doing a few things. We're going to really focus on delivering a steady, high-quality content stream of videos and articles and books to really mine out this revelation and make it available to anyone who would like it. And starting, you've had several encounters, and we'll be talking about this time about the Reformation activity that God is doing, and about the building blocks. And there are 5 piers, and so we're starting 5 schools that are really building out these 5 main foundational areas of this Reformation. So we're going to be talking more about those in the days to come. But it truly is a historic time and an epic time for the body of Christ.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah, there has been a continual conversation with the Lord, and it's not just it's universal. Eddie and I just came from a couple of places where it's happening, where God is moving us, and we're going to talk about a leadership shift today, and we are going to be, making sure our job is to make sure it's scribed down, that the the grain is brought forth from the storehouses for you. There's a stewardship of the prophetic, but also the building blocks and to the earth. And we have a responsibility. We have a part in that. Others have a part in that. There's been a combination of just after Bob died, who I was real close to, where the Lord spoke and said, you'll have 70 days where you really think about Bob's life and what he sowed into your life, but also there'll be next steps. And Bob has been in some of those dreams, just, referring to next steps. And there's a pattern in Scripture where there were ones that came and from the past, and the Lord was there and just gave guidance, and so we're just going to identify some of those ingredients with other ingredients that he's given us for reform. There's a beautiful build out that's happening, as Bob said, of this blueprint. There's been a catalytic understanding of the Lord bringing us into a hope for the future, and then an understanding that he's built revival and still building that, but that he's building reformation, that there's a blueprint for reformation. And so I don't want to be repetitive of what you're saying. So important that we go on this journey together. It's just not one message. It's a journey of friends, partners, hope reformers together to a place where we build out this reformation together. So we're going to discuss. Eddie and I have been on a journey together here lately with Bob, and it's been an unfolding and unpacking for a long time. Just a picture of a leadership shift. And that's a term that Chay's used for a gathering that he has coming up, but it was really what the Lord's been speaking about, is a shift in this next season that the Lord has for us. So we'd like to speak into it and give great traction to the body of Christ. We believe will be our part and helpful in giving traction. I want to say, just backing up to what Bob said, that I've had a recurring dream from the Lord of just the Joseph in the sense of grain and the storehouses. We were on a conversation with Francis this morning, but about this as well, who's our international Voice of Hope Alliance director. But there is these storehouses that Bob spoke about, Jones, and he talked about grain from this area, Kansas City, that would go out in this 500-mile radius to all the earth. And we're not claiming supremacies. We're claiming responsibility for a grain that's to go out to the end of the earth. And it wasn't just a natural grain, but it was a spiritual grain. And the Lord has really been unfolding what that spiritual grain is, that we are to feed the people from this place. And we're going to make one, application, or we're going to pull out some of that grain this morning and feed you with that. Because as Bob said, it's like a grocery store. We'll get a lot of understanding, and it'll be like different aisles of a grocery store, and you got to ask the Lord, what do you take off the shelf for the people at the appropriate time that helps them the best and feeds them the best? So our conversation today is about just the looking into this whole, and I just want to set the table for a second on this. And we've spoke to it a few times, but I had this dream after Bob died, the night before he died, and how he said it'd be the Psalm 67 year, which you can refer to the last videos and get that more unpacked. And it was really not a spiritual year, but to go forth and have fun and build, and how there'd be open cities, and they would be open to reform. Then he took me in a subsequent dream, and the Lord was there, and I'll see the Lord 3 or 4 ways in my dreams, and I might not see him visibly, physically, but I just know it's him and his presence. And he walks us up, Bob does, the Lord's there, and he walks us up, and it's a number of leaders and people, and he walks us up to a hole in the ground. He had pointed at a building first, and he said, this is the building of revival. And it was a large building, and there was some offices. It looked like an office building. You look at the front side of it, where the lights were on, and some offices where the lights weren't on. And he said, more to be done with just reviving the people, where you bring the life of God, the oil, we could describe it, the miracles within the house, within the church, where it spreads across the community. More to be done there. And he said, but look here. And I had asked him about the building of Reformation. And he said, look here. And I couldn't see anything. All I saw as I walked up with the other leaders was a big hole in the ground. And I looked into the hole, and the hole had 5 piers in the hole. And he spoke, a great foundation is being built for Reformation that will bring forth the greatest story on earth.
Wow.
And he talked about how 50 million Hope Reformer, and a whole lot more into that conversation at that point, that we're all just beside ourselves. He said it's better than you could ever imagine. Not that there wouldn't be challenge, but that we're going to go forth and build, and there's going to be success in cities and nations loving him well, and him being loved well. And we're undone. And then he focused on the first pier, and that's what we're to focus on, what we want to share with you today. The 5 piers we referred to, again, past communiques that are on Vimeo, you can look for those. But the first pier that was critical, where we started, was this pier, and it was called Hope Adoration. And it really unpacked a new encounter pathway, and it was really identifying the 12 faces of God, or revelations of God, that would lead to Reformation. And I'll speak for a moment and just let you guys comment, but it's just really important that in this understanding, that God has always showed his face in the house of your pilgrimage, different faces at different seasons of your life, individually and for the body of Christ. And so if they looked for the suffering or the victorious Lord, which they did, and they got the suffering servant, then they were misunderstanding who he wanted to show himself to be at that time. And so for my children, if they need a nurturer, and I come as a harsh disciplinarian, and it's appropriate to be a disciplinarian at times, then I'm going to crush the child. God is calling us, like Moses, to more than understand his activity and his general presence, but know his very form, like it says in Numbers 12, 6 through 8, discerning and seeing his very face.
Is being a scientist of the knowledge of God is really what this, and the Lord called it a new encounter pathway. The Lord himself called it. This is a new encounter pathway, and it was this new encounter methodology and a pathway for reformers that they would have to go on. And there was 12 faces of God, what we call faces of God, but are really 12 understandings or heart revelations of who he is. And for instance, the God of all of life was the first one, and that the God is in every single activity of life. There's the God of education, there's the God of science, the God of business, and so there's the revelation that he's the God of life. Well, that unlocks reformers. So you saw 12 faces, and that as we went down this path, there was an encounter of Jesus that happened, and reformers came forth. They were fed, they were equipped, they were transformed, they were encountered, and enabled to be reformers. So this was the first of the 5 peers, and it's also the first school. And so we're going to be doing jointly the team this New Encounter Pathway School in September. So this will be the first of the 5 schools. We're actually training people in this New Encounter Pathway. I get so excited, Bob, because it is the revelation of God that is going to transform the earth and prepare the people to really be carriers of him and the knowledge of him into every corner of society.
And I think with what you said, and that people have really understood the presence of God as something that warms their heart, frees them from disturbing emotions, and have not seen him as ruddy, where it's power of the ground, it moves to action.
He has answers, solutions.
That we appropriate him in everyday life, and then the benefits and the outcomes are extraordinary. And I dreamed so many times that he said, I just want to help them, and they won't let me help them. Wow. It's like he's separated from our everyday issues of life, and he's not the answer.
Right. For
nations, for cities, for big and little problems. And he's becoming very active. I mean, it's that season, Acts 3:19, the age of restoration in the presence of the Lord.
Well, what I really love about that dream is that the building of revival was already built. There were more rooms to be lit with that kind of revelation and experience of God. But then the Lord took you to this unbuilt building where there was a hole dug. And in that hole, you saw way deep thousands of workers building out these piers. So that tells us that not only are we to look for the presence of God to bring about revival and change, there's a greater change he wants to bring to the earth. And it's a reforming mindset, that there's a reformation, that God is raising up a new perspective of the way he wants to influence society. He wants to bring great change before he comes. There's more. That's when I hear about, when I look at that dream, I hear there's more to be built in this life than maybe we've been perceiving. And revival is not the end game. That it's the knowledge of the Lord like the waters covering the sea. And God says there's more potential for us as believers to change the culture and the cities and nations that we're amongst. And I believe there's so much hope in that. But it seems that God is initiating a new view, and he's seeding these thoughts right now. And so it's an exciting time to be here.
Excellent. Amen. I just want to say when Bob Fraser introduced our content and what we were going to be doing for the next season, did a great job. And then we got into what the Lord was speaking. And this happens to him often when we get into the deep levels of revelation. He just is transported.
He was just gone.
He just disappears.
What do you think he is? I'm not sure.
I don't know. He'll come back and tell us, but I bet he's in one of those rooms of Reformation. Man, we need
Take me there. Take us there. I'm going to go into one of those rooms.
He does have a wonderful strategic revelatory gift. Bob does. So he's a brilliant man, and then he has this childlike faith that kicks in. And so I hope you capture that some on the camera, because it just is really Rich. I'll sit at his kitchen table, just start to unpack, what I'm hearing. I won't have understanding a lot of times. He'll get up and he will unfold and unpack I'll see the tips of the mountain, and he'll pack the mountain, of just understanding in the heart of the Lord and revelation behind it.
He's a great man.
Yeah. And so the combination of us, and Eddie and I have just gotten to go on a wondrous journey where he has an understanding of the heart of the Lord. He has an understanding. He's the greatest hope man. He just lives it out. He's got a hope for now, understands that there's challenges, but really sees a greater than God, and has helped my heart majorly, and just can articulate the revelation we're getting a lot better than me. And I just thank you for that, Eddie. I just really... So I just want to pick up where we left off. That's real important there was 50 million that we saw. We saw the feeding of these storehouses of grain being resource centers all across the earth. There was blue lights where they would come forth. That's where the revelation of God feeding centers would come forth. And we have one here. It's very important. And so we're doing that. Yeah, and we're stewarding what the Lord's speaking. And it feeds our hearts tremendously. And I believe it'll feed yours as well. So we're sharing on we finished with just looking into the whole of Reformation and how there have been the building of revival. And we were just going back and giving a little of backstory, because the Lord has repeated that this is a shift, a leadership shift, as Che has referred to in his upcoming event. I'll be a part of that, but there's a shift. And so to shift a big boat, it takes a while to turn the boat. And for the Lord to just speak to us why it's so important to look into this hole, because there's something that's already built, and it's difficult to just stop and peer into a hole where it seems like it's invisible or nothing. And that's really a scout's job. Our job is to go over the hill where you can't see because the hill's in the way, and say, no, there's a reason to go over this hill, and start to develop out the Reformation. And so the Lord, which Reformation just seems like a big word, but it's just about really the knowledge of Him in an intimate way, and who He wants to be in cities. And He hasn't been loved well in cities and nations and structures and institutions. And they're not just dead organizations. They're living, alive realities of who God's to be. Yes. And the enemy's tried to define them. And we got a great invitation in this thing called reform, which is simply knowing Him and His ways. But it's deep. That's important. So one of the first things the Lord, just to help me turn my boat, said to me, He was reviewing my history and my journey, and He said, I'm pleased with the way you started out, that I really dove into the principles of the Word. And He said, that was rich. Pleased with that. And then He said, I'm going to open up my presence. And so I went with a group of people that really honored His presence, and I did not know. I'd been just a rational syllogisms, logic, Jesuit training, so pragmatist. So I'd been more principles, but not experience. Mm-hmm. That Ephesians 3, where there's an experience that suppresses knowledge, it opens up. So then He brought me into the presence, and that was just wonderful. That was beyond my comprehension, to have that, nearness of Him. I just wouldn't, and I'd love you to speak to it, so I won't more. But then He said, I am moving you I'm honoring the presence. The presence has been a warmth. It's been this, and you can describe it. But I'm moving you into now reform, which is my very faces. It's the knowledge of me and all the institutions of life. And in your life, it's the faces of me that show the very nature of me and my ways. And that speaks to reform. So I'd love you to just comment on that.
I think it's massive what you're saying. I think, we got to learn some biblical principles so we can get a foundation in walking with the Lord. But you can have principles and have a drive and a hunger for God, but maybe not experience. it's like John 7:38, in your inmost being will flow rivers of living water. It's one thing to pursue that and feel that and experience that. And I think we've experienced even worldwide a lot more of the manifest presence of God. We've understood some principles which we never leave, but we know the principle is for the person, and then we begin to experience the person of Jesus, his presence. We begin to feel more, hear more, see more. Our meetings are more enlivened and enriched. Maybe there's more miracles, and we're starting to see, wow, there's a manifestation of Jesus, his kingdom. But God's speaking more about diving into a deeper intimacy, a deeper friendship with him, which you call faces, which he speaks to you, because it's not just an attribute, like a disconnected, theological perspective of God. It's intimate friendship with him, that there's more than a principle. It's more than just feeling. It's an integrated way of life with him, where all three come together and we can walk as Jesus walked, discovering his heart, the way he wants to lead us in and out of seasons where he changes the principles, where we can become flexible in our devotion and encounter him in all of life.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent. And I just, I can say the shift happened in an experiential way for me. I'm just going to speak to this for a second. When I started a business, and he said, I want you to go into this mountain, a business where it's to be a benevolence empire. And right now the fear and greed model is trying to rule. It's not everywhere, but it's trying to rule. And so it was like the 1 Kings 18, where Baal and Asherah, greed and money, and it's about, sexual issues, those gods represented. But God wanted to be God in the mountain of business. So he had me start to ask him what face did he want to show me as the business started. So the first face he spoke to me is the Good Shepherd face. And I didn't know how to come in or go out starting a business. I had not been trained as an entrepreneur. And so Good Shepherd leads, guides, disciplines, brought me all these good shepherds, patriarchs from across the city, led me into entrepreneurial training and at the university here. And it was stunning just what the experience of the Good Shepherd. I saw and studied who the Good Shepherd was in Scripture, but then I added my life experience, and I would appropriate, I need a good shepherd in finances. I don't know how to do a ledger. I don't know how to do a balance sheet. And he brought people along, already taught me as a good shepherd, or led me to the right feedings. And I would not succeed. I went into a business where there's 96% failure, and we've been in this business now for 18 years and succeeded. Then it was the next step, and as we grew so fast, we didn't have the infrastructure. So he told me, you need the better than God. The better than God of order and of structure. Took me through the 1 Kings 3 through 10 and kind of the pattern of the wisdom of Solomon in building, and opened up a better than order and structure. And we went from employees to subs in one setting, and he gave answers as we just declared his face and appropriated him in that situation. And third, we lost a lot of money in the business. And we were not able to pay the payroll. I stood on a chair with my daughter. She's 7, I roll out the payroll, and it's from one side of the room to the other. It's their timesheets. And I feel the weight of paying all these people. And he said, you need to meet God the Redeemer and God the Supplier. And so we just took that payroll and said, you'll redeem our losses, and you'll be the supplier. We lost 300,000, got redeemed. We got supply where we had lost accounts, and we got invited into 9 new accounts of cleaning. And so all of a sudden, I'm declaring to bankers, lawyers, different people that I have to work with closely or get to, accountants, the knowledge of God. I'd give thanks before a meal in his ways and how they had reflected him. And you have all these people saying, I want to praise him. I had
Yes.
bankers walk out with me and just, it was not your normal banking meeting. I'd say, his benevolent face, you've showed me. You took a chance on me, and here's a return. And it was stunning. And so we're heading into that
Yeah.
reality, and it's such a great invitation, and nobody's to be threatened by it.
Yeah.
There has been poison in the bread.
Yeah.
He showed me what the no hope for the future, and there is an understanding that there's challenges, but we see those challenges through the fifth scene. I don't know if you want to speak to any.
Well, I think what you're saying is profound because, the principles that you adopted, you're going to sow and you're going to reap, you're going to find God in business, but then through the challenges, you begin to discover his presence. He begins to expand your company. He begins to shine his face. So I was just thinking of even what we said, the principle, the presence, and how he's bringing out a reform in that process.
That's right.
There's
That's
go
excellent.
sow your seed, but the principle of faith is not all there is, because there's the man of faith that we have to encounter his presence.
That's
and then
excellent.
find hope in the man of faith in the challenges.
That's excellent.
So that we find his benevolent heart towards not only us, but business, because he wants to feed families.
That's right.
And we begin to discover this God of life that's more integrated. Our Christianity is about finding the God of our heart, but finding the God of family, but finding the God of life and culture that brings goodness, that expands our perspective of love for human beings and their development. And I just love that. That awakens me, that it's not just this one compartmentalized view of God and I just got to worship him in a meeting, but I get to find him in all the different seasons and worship him in those seasons, in the church, in the business, wherever he would take us. That to me is an expanding view of the kingdom, a reformational perspective of how he wants to touch not only lives, but change a culture.
That's excellent. That's excellent. It's a healed and expanded view of God. It's healed and expanded view of us through his lens, and a healed and expanded view of our future. And I had just one more application, then I want to just shift into the dream of deeper waters and how that applies. But I taught at a university. That was the next place he sent me, and it was in a public speaking and communications department. And he said, you'll need to know the God of hope in this season, because it wasn't a hopeful communication. A lot of wonderful people, but they'd just been taught critical thinking. So it wasn't appreciative. It was those dumb students a lot of times. And I had bosses that were pronounced and lesbians and not excited about me. And I just feel like a limp noodle. I just get beat up. I was a fairly strong guy, I thought, but just I come out defeated. And he said, just keep after it. He said, love wins. He said, unkindness precedes kindness. And it was a profound principle. And he was really being the good shepherd, but also he was being the God of hope and hopeful communication. And so I brought that face of God into the meetings in this way. They asked, how can we were losing students because we were so in hopelessness and fear about the future. And our job was to tell them what they didn't know, to scare them into getting into a deeper understanding of being prepared. I was a college athlete, and that's what your coach would, they'd beat you down, challenge you to back you up and get you mad enough.
That's right.
Versus, and that works short term. But the nature of God is patriarchal and nurturing.
And you get damaged in the process.
Yeah, you do.
Your heart gets damaged.
Yeah. I mean, I came out a Rottweiler, but yeah, I'm damaged in my love and my hope, and it's just not a healthy long-term way.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's what happened to me before saved, meeting God and saying, no, I got a great inheritance.
That's
I don't
right.
have to have this self-strength, this drivenness, this. And I get to see his nature, and I get to go into reform, and he gets to pull me into an inheritance like a son, and it's a beautiful invitation. But he, in that department, they had asked for, we're losing students, you got any ideas? And so I didn't say it in the meeting because I just wouldn't have been appreciated because I get cut off before you. So I said, can I just put a tape in your box, because I was the last one to speak. and I said, called Lifting Learning. And I said, I'll just give you my thoughts. I might not have told them the title, but I put it in everybody's box. And I just, really, it was through the lens. I'd spent so much time about the nature of God in communication, and love is to do good and communicate. And what were the principles of that which encourages and edifies and builds up in the midst of challenge? And every one of them came to me and said, where did you get that? You know, and those two bosses. And I, you know, held out my Bible and I said, he's really good. It's really not what we think. He really wants to help us. And so it was stunning, the response. And then their unkindness turned into kindness. And I had to proceed the unkindness with kindness. And so that was just another example of reform. And there was a distinct shift in the department. We started giving each other paper plate awards of appreciation. And I'd lead that a lot of times. It was just the nature of God that I saw in them.
Yeah.
And they were builder friendly with it because it had touched them. It had, the presence was stronger than the presence of the enemy.
Because we begin to identify the worth and value of that person, and they begin to find hope in themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like budding virtues. You water it, nurture it.
Yeah, through God's eyes.
Through God's eyes.
Yeah, where he sees the adulterous woman, or sees the ones that put him on the cross and forgives them. He's stunning.
He doesn't want to define us according to our weakness.
Yeah.
He set us free, and he wants us to learn how to live free, and that's hope.
Yeah.
That's the God of hope wanting us to walk into more peace in our right standing and more joy in the relationship and more of a hope-filled perspective of our future where we do not have to fear.
Yeah.
Regardless of challenge, he has the wise, hope-filled solution.
Yeah.
And that's empowering.
Well, it's as you said, it's a reformed way of seeing God.
Yes.
It's a reformed way of seeing people.
Yes.
It's a reformed way of seeing society. It's a reformed way of seeing his plan for us. And that will be unfolding. I just want to share this as the Lord has given in the past. He gave you get those level 1, 5 encounters. This was a level 10. Wow. Changed my life, you know, and it really speaks to reform. As I dreamed I was in a house, and the house represented the church at that point. And I was to walk out the back door of the house. Well, the church at that point that I was to be, and some have used the term forerunner, or just to go out and investigate something for the sake of the church. Like John Wimber investigated, that everybody could do this stuff for the whole sake of the church. So I'm a churchman, but I'm to investigate something for the sake of the church. So I walk out the back door, and there's a guide there. And he says to me, the challenge was, he said, there's a new way of operating and moving forward, and there's new discoveries, and really a new nature of Christianity he wants to bring forth.
It's powerful.
And he said, which path do you want to go on? And so there was a path that was cleared, and then there was a path that was full of thickets and, brush that you'd have to clear out. And I said, I want to go on the right path. And I said, which one was it? And it was the one on the left, which means something, but which was the thickets and the brush. And I said, I'll go on that path, but can I see what's on the right? And he said, sure. And I knew he was okay with them. So I started walking down that path, and it was beautiful. And it wound down to like a creek, and it just was a big open meadow. And I thought, gosh, this is fantastic. But it was descending. Mm-hmm. And it ended up at this creek, and I could go into the many layers to it. But I go down, and at the creek, there was these young men, there were these fathers, there were these elders, and they were barely clothed, and that meant something. They had little swimming trunks on, and they were getting ready to dive into about 6 inches of water, and they're diving off about a 6-foot, cliff or rock, and I run down. I shout, "Don't let them do this!" And there was not an ability to comprehend or understand, and the Lord, like a ticker tape, put a verse across the bottom of this scene. It's dramatic. It's beyond a 3D movie. I'm just looking in their eyes. There's this dullness, this cloud, and the ticker tape said, Hosea 4:11, harlotry and new wine has stole their understanding. Now that had a certain application in Hosea, but he said to me the mixture with the world and some ways of thinking about our future and who God is, and the compartmentalizing of God, you know, not the Hebrew way, but the Greek way of looking at God. But more than that, he said, you know, all of it spoke to a limited view of God, limited view of our hope for this, His plan, hope for for His planet, and for His redeeming of nations and cities and cultures. So he has that Hosea 4:11 go through past, it just runs as a ticker taper at the bottom of this. And then these young men are instructed by their leaders to dive, and they dive into the 6 inches of water, and their heads swell up, their necks look broken. I mean, the description of it it was, not a good scene, bad. And so the ones that survived, there's ones that were laying in the water, not dead, but just couldn't get back up. Yeah. Looked like they had broken their necks. And so, the ones that survived got up, and they were going to do it again. That's all they knew to do. Just try and dive deeper into the same shallow pool.
Wow.
And I stood back, and the Lord spoke. And this is one of those times where you hear Him out loud in a dream. And it was, they're diving into shallow waters in the knowledge of who I am and of my ways, and not seeing me in cities and understanding who I am. They're close to me. And He said, and it's killing them.
Wow.
Just wasn't hurting. It was killing them. And so there was this dramatic shift for me to go out into the city, find His nature and find His ways, that it would erode a person. They'd be the walking dead on this planet. They wouldn't be good earthlings. They'd just expect hell on earth and not any kind of overcoming reality. And that we were to go into this hole, find that Reformation, dig deeper out of these shallow waters, and really give it to the people.
That's powerful. I'm just thinking of what we bought into and what we've settled for, each one of us.
Yes.
For a shallow version of God, thinking it's enough. Because if we're going to keep diving in, you consider the guy that hurt himself, and then the guy that didn't get hurt, he was just going to do it again. And it was acceptable that brothers and sisters are getting hurt, but that's just the way it is, because they weren't even helping one another.
Yeah.
So there was an embracement of a limited view, that's the way Christianity was.
Yes.
There wasn't much hope for more.
That's it.
And God is saying, look, I'm not mad at you. This is not about causing you to grovel on the ground before me, dirty, rotten sinner.
Yeah,
I want to expand your perspective of me, this benevolent Father, and through my Son, I want to let you see yourself the way I see you, so you can see others, so that the promises and the plans I have for the planet, as you say, can actually begin to go forth. And we can go deeper in the way we relate to one another. And that's a change of perspective. That's Romans 12:2, the renewing of our mind. Yes. I mean, my heart's exploding right now, because I'm thinking, Lord, I don't want to settle in my view of you.
Yes.
And I don't want to lead others to dive into a 6-inch, body of water, thinking it's deeper.
Yes, and I think it'd just be great to finish with, what is going from the shallow waters to the deeper waters, and we're given different pictures that hopefully define it clearer for different people, and a word from the Lord Eddie that he said, going from a church to the kingdom church to the Reformation Church. And I just submitted it to you, and I believe Michael was there, a few others, and Kevin, and you really, we were all able to kind of work through, and you just minded out of me, and you gave a great description to it. So what do you hear me hear from that.
You know, I can't remember exactly the way I said it, but I was struck with the fact that God was trying to help us have an expanded perspective of the church, the small church into the kingdom church. I see the kingdom church as something where perhaps, and this is a generality, but we think just revival, maybe miracles and signs and wonders, and that's the manifestation of the kingdom. And I think more other leaders have maybe more of a broader perspective. But when he spoke about the Reformation Church, that speaks of the expanded understanding of what he wants to do in this life, in culture, changing society, which begins by changing the way I perceive God and what he wants to do in me and in us. So I see the Kingdom Church moving into the Reformation Church is the Lord saying, hey, I want you to consider there's a greater reality to what you're perceiving as the kingdom. And I want you to see it more as reforming in thought and in action, the way we think and the way we live, because the way we live becomes that like yeast in the bread, or becomes that joyful virus, if you could say it that way, where people get infected with hope. People get infected with what Jesus did for them. And that begins the change. And God wants to bring greater change to our society. It's not revival or judgment, and that's it.
Yes.
There's a process of God building out his kingdom, but with that dream, looking into the whole, the idea of reformation is not widespread. We look at the building of revival, we're inspired by some of the moves of God, but because, you know, I teach a class on the history of revival at IHOP, and I have for years, and so I'm a little bit in touch with some of the stories. Revivals are short-lived. It's like that holy injection to awaken us, where God could become center. We get our hearts healed, maybe our bodies healed, we get a new vision. But Reformation is taking that revival awakening and letting it bleed out into a culture, transforming, changing, creating a new mindset, perspective, a new culture. And so that's what I think that means in measure. And I know God would add to that, but that's what I'm thinking. Thought, lifestyle, cultural change, cities and nations on the radar, not just the church with extended meetings, not just a few miracles, but the miraculous provision, wisdom, hope-filled view of God, along with all the reviving work. So those are some thoughts I have.
That's excellent. And I hear you saying that God, when he said church, we've had the God of the core of the church versus the God of all of life in church.
Yes.
And as you said it, and then there's been an opening up. No, he's more in all of life. So then we've had people moving into the kingdom, which has been a good thing, where the activity of God and seeing him happen in all life. Now, as you just find it and did just an incredible job, just define how it's really now his face and his ways, the Psalm 67 happening, and you said perfect. And I just want to close. I'll ask you to pray, but I just want to point to you and as partners, friends. It's not a TV gimmick. It's a point at your heart, your life that just, Bill, look into the hole with us. Jay, look into the hole with us. John or not, look into the hole with us. Mike, look into the hole with us. There's different ones that are movement leaders that I've dreamed about a lot that would look into the hole with us. Heidi and Roland, look into the hole with us. Charles, look into the hole with us. Georgianne and Winnie, look into the hole with us. And I don't want to leave anybody out. You know, Mike, look in the hole. Hudgens with us. And Brett, look into the hole with us. Look into the hole with us. Those are the ones that I saw amongst others that walked up and were surprised by looking into this hole and seeing these thousands of workers, and they were invited to help in the construction of the piers. That they had been those that are more builders, building out the upper stories, and now there were to be those foundation builders. We're building the new house, and it's a different crew builds out the foundation than those that are the framers. And so he's asking us to be those ones that become these hope hubs, these resource centers. Peter is calling you to do that. Che is calling you to do that. And so we want to invite us all to go on this journey together. And so I just ask you to pray for us.
Sure.
And release them into this Reformation.
Love to. Father, we just thank you for the way you're speaking. We thank you for what you're revealing. We know you're not just revealing it to one person, but you're seeding ideas. You're revealing it all over the body. You're the God of dreams and visions. You're the God that illuminates your word because you want to speak to your people, your children, that you set free, to see you differently, to be set free from a limited view of you. Lord, I pray that you would continue to set us free from limiting you, from having a diminished view of you and a diluted view of the promises. God, you want to blow the lid on what we believe you still want to do in our lives and in this world we live in, God. You want to instill and impart a great hope to us, a living hope within us, and let it spread all over the earth. God, we want to believe in all that's in your heart, all that you're wanting to give. We want to know what your heart is like. We want to know what you say about the challenges and the situations. What's your thought on that? What's your hope-filled or wise-filled solution for these challenges? That you're not just angry and mad and that you want to just punish us, but you, in kindness, want to lead us to a different way of thinking, a different way of living. Oh, so Lord, I pray for a healing in our view of you, where we thought you were distant, where you may not have been there, and we've diminished our view of your goodness, that we're kind of stuck with you and we're enduring. Oh, Lord, you're the God of great hope and great joy. And I just simply ask for a healed and expanded view of how good you are through your Son, that you want us to radiate with light, with love, with hope. There's much more you want to do with us and through us, that your promises are greater than we've believed. So, Father, I just simply ask in the name of your Son, for all those viewing, that you would just expand our perspective of you, root us and ground us in love and hope in your Son. In Jesus' name we believe, Lord. We believe and trust you.
Lord, I just declare, because it's July 4th in the next couple of days, this might come out a little later, but just you spoke about not cursing our nation, but and just blessing our nation, that you're not done with the United States. And we call forth your name over this nation, the Good Samaritan nation, that we would be those that are kind to even those that are unkind, and that we would have effect in many other nations in inviting you in. And so, God, we stand and we agree with your opening up nations, even through our nation. And God, just raising up these hope reformers, these hope hubs, that would reform different cities and nations, that they were closed, but the time capsule is opened up, and they're opened up where they're asking the question of who you are and inviting you in. So we say yes to that in Jesus' name. Amen. Just want to close and say thank you. And
you're welcome.
Oh yeah, Italian pizza.
I love this guy.
We didn't get our pizza, but we got to get our
But
pizza.
I took you to the boardwalk.
That was good.
That was good.
Yeah, that was blessed. So we have every, to have community development, we have hope hubs. So there's visions, there's values, and then there's vehicles. And if you look at the last Vimeo we set up, or communique, it talks about an implementation plan. You got to have a way to reach the vision. And so there's steps, and Bob referred to a school we're having, and that's one. Here in Kansas City, September 1st through 5th, School of Reformation, where we'll dive into not all 12 faces of God of Reformation, but a few, and how to model it, how to develop it out in your business, your area of life. And so bless you. It's been great talking with you. Amen. Thank you, son, for doing all this. And just leave that on the video because you're a great son.